Have you ever seen someone you wanted to talk to at a coffee shop, a networking event, or a party, and then suddenly your brain goes, but what do I say? What if this gets awkward? What if they don't want to talk? So instead, you say nothing. And then later, usually in the shower, your brain suddenly becomes a social genius. You think of 15 things you could have said. And now, if that sounds familiar, this video is for you. Because most people think they struggle socially because they're awkward. But in reality, starting conversations is a skill. And in this video, I'm going to show you why starting conversations feels so difficult. The psychology behind socially confident people. How to start conversations naturally without sounding weird or forced. What to say after the icebreaker. And how to stop overthinking social interactions completely. And the good news, you do not need to become an extrovert. Let's start with something important. If starting conversations feels scary, you're not broken. There's actually a psychological reason for it. Your brain treats social rejection like danger. Thousands of years ago, being excluded from your tribe was dangerous. So your nervous system evolved to become highly sensitive to rejection, which means when you think about approaching someone, your brain starts running protective software. It asks, what if this is awkward? What if they reject me? What if I embarrass myself? And suddenly, something as simple as saying hello starts feeling weirdly high stakes. This is why so many people freeze. Not because they're unintelligent, not because they're boring, but because anxiety creates mental friction. And here's the irony. The longer you hesitate, the harder it becomes. Because now you're not only nervous, you're nervous about being nervous. And your brain spirals. Sound familiar? Here's something most socially confident people understand. Confidence is not about the absence of awkwardness. Confidence is acting before overthinking takes over. That changes everything. Most people think they struggle socially because I don't know what to say. But honestly, that's usually not the real problem. The real problem is this. People try way too hard to sound interesting. They think, what's something clever I can say? How do I sound charismatic? What's the perfect opener? And this creates pressure because now every sentence feels like a performance. Meanwhile, socially confident people usually do something much simpler. They stop trying to be impressive and start trying to be easy to talk to. That's a huge shift because the best conversation starters are usually painfully ordinary. Things like, how do you know everyone here? Have you been here before? What brought you here? Simple, natural, easy to answer. That's the secret. Great conversations usually begin with low pressure, not brilliance that you can't maintain. Want the easiest conversation strategy in the world? Use your environment. Seriously, most people think they have to invent conversation out of thin air. You don't. Just pay attention to what's already happening. At a coffee shop, what do you usually get here? At an event, what brought you here? Standing in a long queue. Is it just me, or is this line stalled? Why does this work? Because you're creating shared reality. You're both already experiencing the same thing. That makes conversation feel natural, not forced. Confidence usually comes after successful interaction, not before it. Now, here's something nobody talks about. Many socially anxious people are not actually scared of starting conversations. They're scared of what happens next. Because the real fear is, what if I run out of things to say? This is where people panic. But here's the good news. You don't need to become fascinating. You just need to learn conversation kindling. For example, someone says, I recently went traveling to Spain. A weak response, oh, cool, followed by awkward silence. Better response, which keeps attention on the other person. Where in Spain? What was the best part? Would you go back? Same topic, more conversational depth. Confident conversationalists aren't necessarily more interesting. They're usually just better at feeding it. That one idea alone changes conversations massively. Here's another mindset shift to think on. Socially anxious people tend to walk into conversations thinking, do they like me? Socially confident people often think, do I like them? Tiny shift, massive difference. Why? Because one creates pressure, self-consciousness, overthinking. The other creates curiosity, presence, confidence. Curiosity is incredibly underrated socially because when you become curious, your attention moves out of your head and onto the other person, which immediately makes conversations easier. If you take one thing away from this video, make it this. You do not need perfect conversation skills. You do not need clever openers, and you definitely do not need to become a different person. You simply need less pressure, more curiosity, better conversation habits, and more reps. Because social confidence isn't something people are born with. In most cases, it's trained. And the more conversations you start, the easier it becomes, if you have the right foundations. If you found this useful, let me know in the comments. What part of starting conversations do you struggle with most? Starting, keeping it going, or knowing how to end it? And if you want deeper training around conversation flow, confidence, fast thinking, storytelling, and knowing what to say naturally, check out the Velocitalk blog and Foundations training below. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.